Yo, what up, my mestizo coffee click? We're back in effect, serving up more content, exclusive content for you. And want to thank you for joining us. Today, we're talking coffee mission. And I'm with my man, Angel Medina, who's up in Portland, Oregon. And Angel, people are aware that those of us who love coffee will go to great lengths to enjoy a good cup, but maybe they're not always aware of the even farther lengths we'll go to avoid a bad cup of coffee. Now, tell me the story about when you were in Mexico recently.
Well, it's it was actually 3 years ago. So it was one of my first big sourcing trips to Mexico. So I was excited. I'm going to Colima, which is, if you're familiar with Colima, it's nestled between Jalisco, Michoacan, about 4 hour drive from Guadalajara. Anyway, figure I'm going to a coffee growing region. I'm going to go buy coffee. I'm going to be around people that love coffee. I don't really think I need anything other than gifts, right? Like usually I carry my to-go stuff, whether it's a metal Kalita filter or something. But in this case, I wasn't prepared, so I showed up. I celebrated the night I got there, and the next morning I just needed coffee. So I figured producers got to have it, or the people. I mean, it's a coffee growing town. Somebody in this place in Colima has to have like a good setup or a good coffee. And I kept asking around, and nobody had anything fresh. I brought 10 bags of my own coffee to share, and at one point I'm like, man, fuck it. I'm just gonna break into one of these bags. I'm gonna take a few grams of coffee and go from there. The challenge now was whether I was gonna just chew it like it's tobacco or brew something without any equipment. So I remember just like asking around, and somebody's like, yeah, we got like we use a brewer in the back, and this is in a farm, and keep in mind, this is the middle of like harvest, so there's not really like roast. They don't roast coffee; they grow the shit and they harvest it. So there's not really a bunch of coffee. There's a ton of it, but it's all green and it's in sacks. So the only available coffee was going to be Folgers or the stuff that I brought. So I said, "Fuck it, all right. I'm going to open one of these bags, and I'm not using that nasty ass like coffee maker with the orange stains and shit. You guys know what I'm talking about? Like it looks something like this in the bottom, because it's been years and years of abuse. And anyway, like
Years
I was like,
of abuse.
yeah, I was like, you guys need to just rinse it from time to time. So I was like, all right, fuck it. What would I do if I had nothing? Which in this case I didn't. So I was like, you guys got a Ziploc bag? Yeah, cool. I need 2 Ziploc bags. You guys have tea? Great. Okay, I need like 2 or 3 tea bags. And I need a tea kettle, which I hope you have a tea kettle, and they did. So
Wait a minute. So wait, what was that? Are they tripping out at you at this point? Like,
yeah, like
what's this
what's wrong
man
with
doing?
it? We have the brewer. It's perfectly fine. I'm like, I'm not fucking touching that thing, and I'm not in like, I didn't come all the way down here to drink fucking Folgers, right? Like this fucking shiny, like granulated, like weird crystal shit. Like I'm just not messing with. So I was like, no, we're gonna do this. I got an idea. And they're like, okay. And they just like at one point, it's like two of the kids that like brought the shit, and all of a sudden, like I'm at the table, and there's like pretty much all the producers and the people that are bringing in their coffee, and somebody's recording this shit. I don't know what happened to the video, but like all of a sudden, I have an audience, and it's like I feel like one of those guys at Costco, like trying to sell you shit. And I'm like,
Wait, so
okay,
this is you're working with the coffee you brought from the U.S. down into Mexico, or coffee that you had roasted in the U.S. and brought down
yeah. I
to
brought it
Mexico?
as gifts, right? And I thought that like, well, we'll break into it, but they didn't have a fucking grinder. Like that's the thing that killed me. I was like, how do you guys not have a grinder? And yeah, like it just none of it made any sense. And it's something that I've learned to I realize that now that like, um, it doesn't take a long time if you work hard enough and read enough about coffee and you travel enough. You get to a point where you become an expert in the field pretty fast, right? In this case, some of these folks that work so hard out in the fields aren't really savvy about pour overs or any of this shit. They produce the stuff, but very seldomly do they keep it. I mean, why would you keep it? I feel weird when I keep my coffee. I sell the shit because I just like I look at it as like, oh man, that's like a $15 bag I'm sitting on. You know what I mean? Like I brew everybody else's shit. I brew my stuff when I'm cupping, and I make sure that we go through it and that we do a quality check. But as far as like stuff from home, I mean, like I'm brewing this like Christmas blend that somebody gave me, you know, like I'm not touching my stuff. That's money. Anyway, so point of the story is that like at this point I have an audience, right? Like it's like the whole fucking village has come out, and I'm like, oh damn, they're probably expecting me to do like a magic trick or something. But all I did was just take the coffee, put it in the Ziploc bag, sealed it, put it inside of another Ziploc bag, and then stepped on it for like 3 minutes until it was pretty. It was a nice grind size. You know, it wasn't consistent. Obviously, there were some fines, there was some more coarse, but everybody was just like, what is this? How like Americans brew? And I'm like, no, this is just a desperation. So once I had it and I had like a nice grind, I took it and then I mean, this sounds like I'm rolling, like I'm finding weed paper, but it was kind of like that. Like I took the tea bags, like cut them open, dumped out the tea, and you know, like washed off whatever residue was left from the tea, and then dumped my coffee into it, and then just put them in the cup, right? The same way that you would put a tea bag, and then just put the water on it and just made coffee. It was not the best coffee that I could have possibly made, but it was better than any of the shit that I was going to have at that point in Mexico in the middle of January when, you know, coffee's just not, you know, widely available. It is available if you buy it on the cans or whatever, but not some fresh stuff, right? So the weird thing about it is that at the end there was like no clap. It was just like everybody's like, it's kind of like the story where they're like, that's it, nobody died, like that, there's no magic. They're like, oh,
well, actually, that raises an interesting question about the role that grind size plays in how coffee ends up tasting. So, what role does it play?
Well, it plays a pivotal role because, you know, you can get different things from it depending on. I mean, there's so many variables, right? From the age to the type of coffee it is to what it is that you're brewing on. So with espresso, obviously, you're going to grind really fine to make sure that you know that when the pressure, the water comes, that it's pressing against it and it's supporting it and giving you an even extraction. If you went too coarse on a espresso, then it's just going to flow through and it's looking like, you know, well, it's like a busted sewer pipe, right? With a pour over, for example, you almost want to take the age of when the coffee was roasted. In this case, if you have anything between 0 to like 10 days or 0 to 5 days, let's say, then you want to go a little finer. And part of that is because you want to stay away from the contact zones where the roastiness has happened. A coffee that's been freshly roasted is going to be a little smokier, and not like not the good kind of smoky. It's just, it's going to taste almost a little more burnt, despite whether you're roast light or medium. And to be honest, it hasn't really quite off gas, right? Like coffee's filled with that shit. This is the reason why, you know, for us, we do these bags here with the off gassing holes so that it off gases as it ages and nothing else is coming in and staying fresh. So within that period, you want to go a little finer because you don't want to taste any of that shit. And you want to make sure that you have enough, like your water pressure is not too, or excuse me, water temperature is not too hot where you're over extracting. If you're over extract, then you're going to get a little bit of taste of like wood or imperfection, I guess. And it's not necessarily an imperfection that existed in the coffee. So it is why it's so important. Once you get past that 5 to 7 window, you can go a little coarser, almost to the point of like table salt, because the coffee is now off gas a little better. You're not worried about over extracting at that period. You could even go a little hotter on your temperature. I mean, there's so many variables to it depending on the age. I would say my best word of advice is like, get a good grinder so that you can control the shit. And if you feel like you want to experiment, you know, try different grind settings, half coarse and half, you know, a little finer. And that's the best thing that you know, blend them together and see if that's what you like. Ultimately, it's going to come down to like how much work you put into it. And you know, the more equipment that you have, the more you nerd out on this shit, obviously the more control you're going to have. But at that point, I mean, you're at a whole different level of coffee nerd, you know?
You know, there's I think it was Jesus who said it. It might have been on the Sermon on the Mount. He was he looked to his disciples and I think he said something along the lines of Do what you can to avoid shitty coffee.